Hi everyone, Destiny friend Tano here, the internet's best friend. And it's time for a review of the new Leviathan album, Scar-Sighted. Leviathan is a West Coast American black metal project that is masterminded by multi-instrumentalist Rest, aka Jeff Whitehead. He's been at it for years now. Some of Leviathan's recordings span all the way back to the late 90s. And Jeff has also been featured in other musical projects, such as Lurker of Chalice, which is another solo project, Von Goat, as well as Twilight, which is kind of a American black metal supergroup of sorts, featuring Malefect of Xasthur, as well as Blake Judd of Knockmistium, and even Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth at one point, among other artists as well. But Leviathan is the longest running project Rest has been involved with, and one that started out pretty traditional by black metal standards if you can get your ears on some of Leviathan's earliest recordings. And as Leviathan started evolving past that more standard black metal sound in the mid-2000s, Rest started incorporating maybe more atmosphere into the mix. His music started getting more depressive. The album Silhouette and Splinters actually flirts with dark ambient a little bit. This time period was actually pretty prolific for Leviathan. We had Rest dropping one split CD after another with black metal projects from the US and Europe. But things eventually took a more aggressive turn in 2008 with the album Massive Conspiracy Against All Life. And creating a hellish, depressive, and frightening vibe really became the focus on the next Leviathan album, True Traitor, True Whore, with the guitars and the vocals on this album reaching just loud and freakish levels of insanity. Leviathan was kind of staying true to those black metal roots, but also experimenting pretty boldly with sound on this record, to the point where I'm kind of sorry I didn't review it when it originally came out, but still, given the experimentation and the adventure that Leviathan's been embarking on sonically with his latest output, I was sort of, curious as to what Scar-Sighted was going to hold. But I'm not going to talk about this album just by myself. I've invited the one and only Mr. Myke Seatown of his own YouTube channel, as well as Dead End Hip Hop, to discuss this new Leviathan album with me. Transition, and here we are, Magic of the Internet, with Mr. Myke Seatown to talk about this new Leviathan album. Myke Seatown, one of the most metal guys I know, decided that we needed to talk about this record together. So Myke, what do you think about this new Leviathan album?
I love it, man. It's pretty much exactly what I wanted from Leviathan. I don't think it's too much of a sharp turn from True Traitor. I just think that with this one, it just sounds way more focused, and it's suffocating, it's ugly, it's gross, it's disgusting, it's everything that I go to Leviathan for.
That's pretty much what I thought about it too. I mean, the first thing that hit me about the record when listening to it is that this album is freaking massive. It is a huge record, and it's such a fantastic record for the progression that he's been going in since, like the late 2000s, when he kind of came out of that depressive black metal spell and started doing harder, more aggressive stuff. And, True Traitor, True Whore, so aggressive, so noisy and so chaotic. And this album, to me, especially with some of the opening material, like Dawn Vibration, for example, it's really hellish. It's really noisy. It's so overloaded, but it never felt like too difficult to decipher for me, kind of like a Portal album or something like that. It felt a lot like Controlled Chaos.
I don't know, man. I think the best parts about his albums are that they do kind of take, at least for me, they take a little bit of getting used to and a little bit of deciphering, because
for sure. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that it wasn't impossible to decipher. You know what I mean? It didn't seem like trying to decipher. It didn't seem like futile. You know, there are so many layers of, especially on one of these opening tracks here. You're what he's doing with his vocals, kind of delivering those really deep, resonant, guttural vocals, which kind of border on, a death metal style. He just throws so many of them on top of each other in the mix, and it's really overpowering.
I thought that was one of the most interesting things about this record is it's not really a black metal record, you know? And I think he's been going in this direction for the past 3 or 4 records, but With this one, I think there's a lot of doom metal. There's a lot of like you said, like Portal-ish death metal. There's a lot of ambient. There's even like some noise elements to this. Like he's mixing in so much stuff, and it comes together so well.
Yeah, it's really eclectic, and what I love about this record too, he really changes up his vocal stylings a lot as well. He throws in some spoken word. There was one track on the tail end of the song, on the tail end of one of the tracks toward the beginning of the album, where all of a sudden the guitars go kind of clean, and he's just, letting out these like blood-curdling shouts, and it was just super chilling. Like some of the best parts on this album are really freakish.
You know, whenever I listen to black metal, it's like my mind immediately goes to like either despair or anger. And the best thing about Leviathan records is you can get both of those things and like a shit ton more, and that's just in one song. And I think that's like one of the best parts about Leviathan is when you put an album on, you get so many different feelings and so many different emotions from listening to it. And that's pretty rare in black metal. Usually if you have a record, it's one standard theme throughout the entire thing. This is not the case.
No, and the thing is, I think he did a really great job of elongating things on this record. True Trader is a little bit more of a direct album. It's just about 40 minutes long, and this one is over an hour. The title track alone is 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the fact that he puts so many different things into his songs, allows him to drum up all these different parts and phases in each track. So, it's these songs aren't anywhere near redundant. They're always progressing towards something different, which is a characteristic I pick up in a lot of American black metal acts. A lot of those Nordic acts tend to be a little bit more repetitive and minimal, and really go for an atmosphere, which is fine. But I would say this album, not only brings some death metal to the table, some noise to the table, but definitely some progressive and experimental rock elements too.
I agree, absolutely.
So for me, some of my favorite moments come right at the beginning of the record and right at the end of the record. The beginning of the album for me contains some of the most hellish parts on the entire album. Dawn Vibration is maybe my favorites of all of those because it's just such an immense way to start the album, especially after that, sort of drony ambient intro that I think kind of gets you calm right before he just throws, everything at you, everything he's got all at once. And then my other favorite moments are maybe the three final tracks, which another interesting thing about this record, I think as it progresses, it gets a little less cloudy and a little less difficult to decipher. On the very next track on here, Gardens of, I'm gonna botch this pronunciation over here, Corpolite. You start hearing a little bit more guitar melody in there, and I think as the album progresses forward, you're getting a little bit more melody here and there, though it's still heavy, it's still sinister. And those three final tracks are some of the most epic songs on the entire album, and they just feel really grand and really huge.
Yeah, I'll say my two main favorite songs on this whole album had to be definitely Within Thrall and Dawn Vibration. And Dawn Vibration mainly because he's definitely stepped his guitar game up. Like, I've always thought he was a great musician, but the guitar work on this album I think is fucking awesome. And on Dawn Vibration, I hear a lot of like Prometheus era Eson when I listen to that, and I love Emperor's my all-time favorite black metal band. So hearing that on this is fucking great. But Within Thrall absolutely blew me away because I love how it starts off with that pretty standard like death metal-ish riff, then it gets quiet for a second, then it comes in with that just straight up Dark Throne old school black metal riff. And it's just a perfect song. But, man, there's not a single... I can't even think of a bad song. There's not even a bad song on this whole album, man. It's so good.
I can't think of one either, I mean, that track and A Veil Is Lifted weren't two of my favorite songs on the record. I thought as the album came toward the middle, we were at a point on the record where I think the songs got comparatively straightforward in comparison with the other songs on the album. They weren't as, you know, cacophonous. They weren't as weighted down and like tons of vocals. The guitars felt, as you were saying, you know, a little bit more straightforward, and you could read them easier, and they were more technical. But the songs weren't as huge as some of the finishing tracks. Yeah. And maybe as a result of that, you know, with my initial listens here, they didn't stick with me as much as the initial songs and the ending songs. But like I have a lot of reasons right now to return to this album, and I think as I listen to this album more, those tracks are only going to grow on me, you know, because even those songs, you know, didn't really strike me as awful. I don't think Leviathan here, in the grander scheme of things, is reinventing the wheel with black metal, but like he's doing really creative stuff with it, you know, and throwing things into it that I don't think a lot of artists would think to or would in general, and not necessarily in like kind of a gimmicky way, like, oh, you know, he threw a banjo into the mix, oh my God, you know. I think how he experiments with black metal is, you know, with just some really great compositions, and when he does throw sounds in there that wouldn't normally be there, they're really chilling, and they're really scary, and they're really freaky. You know, every sound that is sort of new and different only enhances the best things and the most amazing things about black metal, you know, that you come to expect from the genre.
Yeah, I definitely think that what Rest does is he's pulling off something that very few bands could actually pull off without sounding cheesy.
And yet he's one guy.
Exactly. How amazing is that? That you have this one dude that goes into a studio and is able to make this incredible, ridiculously disgusting, but complex, super complex album, and it totally sounds cohesive. It doesn't sound like a mess. You know, True Traitor at times sounded like a beautiful mess. I don't get that same feeling with this. It sounds like, even though I know he said sometimes that he does improvise in the studio when it comes to his music, but it sounds like every note, every bridge, you know, every piece is put into place for a specific reason, and everything just comes together so just perfectly. I can't think of another band really that is doing something like this, that's doing it this well, that doesn't sound like a shitstorm.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could, there are some other black metal acts, that American black metal acts, that I could think are doing music that, you know, tries to be grand, not in the same sense, but, you know, like Death Heaven or something like that. And there are other acts like Knock Mystium that, you know, do comparatively, you know, do comparative experiments. But this album is just so huge, you know. While maybe it might not be as obvious with its crescendos as like a Death Heaven album, you know, it's definitely huge, but stays true to that black metal sound. You know, it doesn't feel like he's bringing post-rock into the fold when he's, you know, making these songs huge. And I think that's really what separates this LP from True Traitor. You know, while that album is gruesome, this one is gruesome and grand, you know, especially during those finishing moments.
Yeah, like the closing track. Yeah. I can't pronounce it either, so I'm not even going to try. Starts with an A. I'm going to leave it there. But
yeah, what he's doing with like the really deep guttural vocals and the spoken word on that track is just really, you know,
it sounds like a nightmare. It sounds fucking scary. Mm-hmm. And again, like I like Knock Mystium, but they're not scary to me. No. Like even Creek is not scary to me. Like Lurker of Chalice, which was his, you know, that shit is scary. It's like anything this guy does is fucking terrible.
Which is actually a good, you know, point of comparison, you know, because I think elements of that project leak into this album as well, because, you know, it sort of sets that the latest album from that project for me is that there's a lot of different parts to work with. You know, the songs feature a lot of progressions, and they're really multifaceted, and I think that's what he started doing here.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely doing black metal a huge service by putting out music like this, because so many black metal bands now, especially the US bands, I don't even get into the whole cult and true bullshit. They're just not dark. They're not scary. Everything about this shit is fucking terrifying, and that's what I love about it so much.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of American black metal bands, you know, they fall into a certain, you know, trend. You know, they definitely pick up the blast beats, they pick up the tremolo guitars, and they might even incorporate some of those wretched vocals as well. But they're not necessarily trying to, you know, be scary or be frightening or be freakish, you know, which which is fine, you know. But I think I think Leviathan again has managed to stay true to what black metal's roots are, but is just doing it bigger, on this record. This is a great recording. It's very high fidelity, it's very detailed, it's very dense and complex, but you don't feel like you're listening to something overproduced. You don't feel like you're listening to something that has been spruced up and cleaned up to the point where it's just really sterile.
Yeah, he's definitely found that great middle point between the more cleaner, modern stuff and like old, nasty, recorded in a fucking trash can underwater, Lelouch's noir type shit. Like, he's found that perfect middle point. And I can't say enough good things about this. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really liking it. I think it's going to be one of my favorite metal records of the year. It's still too early to tell if it's going to be my favorite, but it's definitely a fantastic album for, it's March, snow is melting soon, hopefully. Things are picking up musically, more records are coming out every week. Some of the bigger artists are starting to drop their stuff, and I think this is a really great record to to kick off the start of the musical season.
Absolutely, I agree.
All right, I'm feeling like a decent to strong 8 on this thing. I mean, I don't know about you.
Oh, I don't know, man. I'll go with that.
You just love the shit out of it. That's completely fine.
A decent to strong. Is that good? Does that work?
That's fine with me. That's fine with me. All right, guys, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we thought about this new record. Check it out. I'm going to leave a link down there in the description box where you guys can stream the album for yourselves. And I want to thank Myke again for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to leave a link down there in the description where you guys can watch his videos. He does vinyl updates, he does solo reviews, and of course,